Hello. I want to welcome you to the beautiful downtown Savage. My name is Stu Cunn. I'm the president of the Howard County Citizens Association, and we are honored tonight to be here with you all and the candidates. We also are honored that we are partnering with the Savage Community Association, and I would like to welcome and have her have a little say. This is Susan Garber, who's the chairperson of the Savage Community Association, and we, HCCA, have been working hand in hand with Ms. Garber, and we are very, very proud of what we've accomplished.
Thank you, Stu. Good evening. On behalf of the Savage Community Association and residents of Savage, I'm delighted to welcome you to our historic and cherished Baldwin Hall. It is now 96 years into serving this community as our gathering place for events just like this one. I'm delighted also to have folks here from up and down the Route 1 corridor. If we could just very quickly, let me see who's here from District 1. Good to see you, Elkridge. How about District 2? All right, good showing from Jessup and beyond. District 3? Okay, and folks beyond in District 4. Well, we're happy to have you here tonight as well. Although we are unique communities along the Route 1 corridor, we also share a lot in common, not the least of which is the feeling of being the red-headed stepchild sometimes. I see the heads nodding, okay? I don't want to upset those who are new to the area. Those who've been around for a decade know that sometimes North Laurel, Savage, Jessup, and Elkridge compete for the title armpit of the county. Right? But not anymore, right? Times are thankfully going to change. And if you'll forgive me, I will say there's a reason why we're not going to take it anymore, is the battle hymn of the Route 1 corridor. We've got a master plan for revitalization coming, and a development code rewrite, and a whole new council coming to us soon. Now, there's one anticipated question that you're not going to hear tonight. And the question would have been, would you vote to approve the Savage Mill land swap? The good news is you're off the hook, because just a few weeks ago, County Executive Kittleman finally let us know he is not going to let that go forward to our new council. It's particularly sweet to have heard that Rockburn Park got permanent preservation last week. Is the leader of that group here tonight? Nice to see you. So things are happening, and we want to keep them happening, and we want to keep you coming back to visit Savage from time to time as well. We hope you'll mark December the 1st, our big Christmas celebration with the lighting of the bridge and the tree, home-baked goodies, children singing. It's an event not to miss. Without any further ado, though, I'm going to turn the mic back to Stu, and we'll get underway.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. Just to solicit the Howard County Citizens Association, we have some applications in the back. It's only $20 a year and $10 if you're a retiree, or if you have children, it's only $10. We've done a lot of work. You can go on our website. It's Howard County HCCA.org, or you can Google, and you can see what we're all about. I also want to thank all of you, including the candidates, because you all have given up tonight Dancing with the Stars. And also that you've given up the voice. But tonight, you're going to hear stars, we hope in the future, and you're going to hear their voices. So you're not missing anything. Okay?
Please don't make us sing.
That's for America's Got Talent, and luckily that's off tonight.
I think except one.
But we're going to have, this is going to, excuse me, sir. And I'm playing Sergeant of Arms tonight. I don't like doing this, but we're going to have to. We're going to be turning it over to the audience to ask questions after we ask our questions. We have priority. The audience will get 30 seconds to ask their question. We don't want dissertations. After 30 seconds, I'm going to cut it off. Susan, who's the timekeeper? Where's Susan? Got a timekeeper?
I think I will now become the timekeeper.
Okay. So, here's going to be the rules of engagement tonight with our candidates. We're going to give the candidates 5 hours to introduce themselves. We're only going to give them 2 minutes. Is that better? 2 minutes to introduce themselves. In that introduction, we would like to have you all state what your platform is. Okay. After you do that, we then are going to ask our questions. You will get 1 minute to answer the question. Now, you will also get a minute if you disagree with anyone. And if you agree, which is okay, there will be much more questions that the audience can give. So maybe you might want to agree. It's up to you. So we give you that flexibility. So we're going to start, but before we start, there's one person I really want to thank. And that is an individual who does a lot of work for Savage. I've seen him in action. I saw him in action tonight. And he is the reason that I am talking into this microphone. Where's Jeff Smith?
Jeff has to leave early, he'll be back when, you know.
Well, you make sure that I told him that he's okay. Okay? But Jeff Smith set this all up. He's tremendous. Okay, so let's begin. Raj, we're going to begin with you. And by the way, I'm calling you all by your first names because we want to keep this very informal. So Raj, you have 2 minutes introduction, and please include your platform.
Great. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank HCCA and also Savage Community for organizing this. And thank you all for coming out here. My name is Raj Kathuria, your candidate for County Council from District 1. I am a realtor, a small business owner who owns poultry waste, renewable energy startup. If you can say it so many times, you will know what I mean. I was also the owner of Bistro Blanc, a restaurant in Western County. I am a naturalized citizen from India and a 32-year resident of Howard County. I live with my wife Sangeeta and 3 children in Ellicott City. 32 years ago, when I came to the United States, my dad gave me a $20 bill and said that's the last help he will ever give me. Even today, I carry a $20 bill to remind me where I came from, and that is all I had. And this is how I will serve you, is to make sure that I will take care of your funds because somebody trusted me with his last dollar, and you can trust me for that. People before politics is the key foundation of my campaign. And people before politics is how I will serve you. My platform is, I was the first one to talk about High School 14 when everybody was debating about High School 13, because I have seen how much of overdevelopment as a realtor I could see that had happened in Howard County, and we do not have enough adequate public facilities that include school system and other public facilities that are required. And okay, so that's 30 seconds. I think
We're gonna raise this. I just got informed. We're gonna raise this. This is trick or treat on you guys.
okay.
And we're gonna raise this when you 15 seconds to go.
Oh, great.
So you have 6 more seconds, sir.
High School 14 and school system is one of my biggest platform, and also smart and thoughtful development is what I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz?
My name is Liz Walsh, and I am the Democratic nominee for County Council in District 1, representing Elk Ridge. I am a Mount Hebron grad, 1989. I'm a civil engineer from Georgia Tech, and for the last 20 years, I've been in law. I came back to Howard County to raise my own kids. I have 2 children now in 1st and 3rd grade, and when we first moved back home, I kind of thought everything was as I left it, and for admittedly a while I was complacent. But the more that I began paying attention to what our local government was doing and what they weren't doing, it became clear to me that we needed some change, because particularly in District 1, particularly in Elk Ridge and Ellicott City, the small old towns so many of us call home, we were not being good stewards of the dwindling resources that we had left, whether they were green spaces or historic streetscapes or that last, untouched swatch of forest or stream bed, and we needed to do better. And so I started to ask a lot of questions about why we weren't being better stewards, why development kept pushing into even our most overcrowded schools, our most flooding watersheds, our most congested roadways, and I never got any good answers. And so I entered the race, and I think it's time for change. I think we've had success. In the primary, we won by just 6 votes with a very small grassroots campaign. We take no developer money. We will not be influenced by special interests. We will represent the people who live here, the families who live here, the kids in the schools, because that's the way government should be, and that's how I will work as hard as I can to make it be in the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. My name is Opel Jones. I'm a Democratic nominee running in District 2 for County Council. First, I'd like to thank the Savage Community Association, as well as the residents of Savage, for having me. My background is in education. I'm currently a teacher. I teach in DC at American University. So my commute there, I get to see a lot. I either go down Route 1, because I live right off of Route 1 in Howard Square, on the corner of 175 and 1. There's no way to get in or out of my development without getting on Route 1, so I'm on Route 1 every single day. I commute down, and on the way down, on the way back, we see backup, we see traffic, we see people standing on the side of the road waiting for buses. Those types of things got me interested in politics, in addition to the community service that I was doing already through my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, very heavily involved in the Alpha Achievers. We're in all 12 high schools, very proud of that program. And once I got appointed to the Human Rights Commission by Ken Oldham, County Executive, as well as appointed to the Democratic Central Committee, I started to see things on county-wide, see what's going on. Why is this happening? Why is this not happening? And then when my councilman, Calvin Ball, who as you know is running for county executive, it was an open seat, I said, okay, who's filling those big shoes? And the names, either I didn't hear any names, or the names I heard I wasn't impressed with, so I threw my hat in the ring. My wife supported me. That's the first person I asked. She's not here yet, she's on her way, but that's the first person I asked if I could run. She said yes, so here I am. Before my time runs out, my platform is dealing with education, making sure our schools are fully funded, making sure our teachers have what they need, making sure that there is not a shortfall for the budget. Additionally, public and personal safety. I think we have the finest police department and one of the finest fire departments, if not in the region, in the nation. And I want to make sure that they're good to go and they're funded and they continue to have an amazing pension and salary and all that jazz to keep us safe. And community vibrancy. I'm very interested in the redevelopment of village centers, and I want to make sure that development that happens here in the county, which will happen, is slow enough and smart enough so that we're all, that there isn't overcrowding in schools. I'm definitely, even though this is part of my platform, my original platform, I'm definitely interested in redistricting. So I'm going to work hand in hand with the Board of Ed to make sure that our school, I'll stop. Yes, redistricting. Thank you, Mr. Pumpkin.
Hello, can everybody hear me okay? Is the mic, am I too close or? Good. Okay, so hello everybody. My name is John Laio. I am running for County Council in District 2. So good to see everybody here. So District 2 on Route 1 goes from Dockett's Lane, which is right next to Dockett's Elementary School, down to 175. But it sounds short, but actually encompasses a lot of communities. We have thousands of units in District 2, and then from west to east, we basically run from Columbia all the way to Coca-Cola Drive, and we call it Hanover. So even though we do not occupy a very long strip on Route 1, but we have a big communities there. So I'm a 20-year resident of this country, 10 years in Texas, 10 years in this great state of Maryland. I have a background in infrastructure engineering and public policy. I currently reside in Long Reach, and I think Long Reach is basically defines District 2 because people travel all across neighborhoods to go to school, go to jobs. If you live in Elbridge, go to Howard High, which is right next to Phillips Lock in Long Reach. If you live in Hanover, you go to Long Reach High School, which is basically Long Reach. So that's really the definition of my district. I really love this county. This is so diverse. The western part of the county reminds me of home in Texas. The eastern part reminds me of numerous places that I've lived in my life, including Asia and Europe. And so going forward, I think there's a lot of potential. And one of the reasons I want to run is because I want to bring new leaderships and vision, especially to this part of the county. Now, really quickly, just 3 platforms. Number 1, I want to revitalize villages. Already done.
15 seconds.
Okay, revitalize villages. And then secondly, commercial developments, job creation. And thirdly, will be innovations, inclusion, and inclusions.
Christiana?
All right. I'm going to stand because I actually have back problems, which makes sitting hard, and I probably should have thought about before running for county council, because there's a lot of sitting. But I was born and raised here in District 3. I grew up around here. I actually walked in a Savage Parade when I was a student at Hammond High, so it was really fun to be able to come back as an adult with my kids and walk in the parade. Not this year, the previous year. And I actually live just up around the corner, and I've served on the Kings Contrivance Village Board for several years. It's kind of how I got involved in a lot of local issues, how I sort of fell down that rabbit hole and ended up here. But I've also served on the board of Howard EcoWorks, which is a nonprofit that does workforce development with youth and people who are experiencing incarceration, but working with them to train them on stormwater management projects, and they actually participate in the Soak It Up Ellicott City program, which works with homeowners to sort of retrofit their properties that were built in previous earlier developments to help soak up that water before it reaches Ellicott City. I really value the reason I'm running is because I want to make sure that our education system is fully funded, that our neighborhoods are safe and inclusive, and perhaps most importantly for tonight, that we receive investment here in District 3. So that means everything from making sure that Hammond High gets their renovations before my toddler gets there, which was their previous plan. But thanks to Carlene Penna, moms, preschool moms that I worked with, and our village board, we were able to get enough going so that they advance that so it happens sooner. But that also means walkable and connected communities. I've walked the entire length of Guilford Road. I know how dangerous that is, and I'm very excited that we have a complete streets audit coming on Tuesday with the Horizon Foundation, so if you're able to make it, I hope you'll come out to First Baptist Church on Guilford.
Thank you all. Is there anyone that wants to be able to ask a question, that wants to put their name in this jack-o'-lantern? If you do, there's some tags in the back, and just come up. Anybody wants any? Help yourself. Okay. Now for the debate. And the first question tonight is probably going to be the toughest one that you get in the next 5 hours. And that is, and I'm going to ask Christina first. Christina. First question is, what major quality do you have that your opponent does not? Now, it's interesting because Ms. Rigby doesn't have any opponents. So as a result, I want you to just simply answer, what is your best quality?
Okay, well, my first answer is going to be that I exist. So that's good.
You're going to get one minute.
So I can do that. I think my best quality is really my demonstrated track record of bringing people together around a variety of issues. I have a lot of experience taking people who have either different passions or different interests and working together to find common ground, and I think that's a very important skill to have on a council where you have to get at least 3 to 4 votes, including a county executive or a veto-proof majority. So I'd say that's my best skill.
Thank you. John,
Yes.
what major quality do you have that your opponent does not?
So I think the major qualities, I would say that I'm very open. And I think there are a lot of people out here today who know me, know that I'm speaking the truth, that I'm open to a lot of different ideas. I can work across, I'm not just across the aisle, but across a lot of boundaries, and even to people who might have language disabilities, and then I can cross-communicate very well with people, and then I can work with people very well.
Thank you. Opel? Same question.
Well, ironically, he stole my answer. I was going to say the same exact thing, but I would still say that I'm a people person. I love people, and people generally love me. I think that I work well with people. That's a major quality that I have, so much so that I've been endorsed by several wonderful agencies. Most recently, the police union and the firefighters union, very proud of that. I'm also endorsed by the teachers union. In addition to CASA in Action, very involved with what's going on in the Hispanic and Latino community. In addition to Laio Pro-Choice, the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws. So given that I can work with people and I can present myself well, understand what's going on as a teacher, that's what I do every day, I think that that would be a major quality that I have, and I guess John Laio has the same major quality.
Liz?
I would say technical expertise. If Opal's a people person, I think you said before, Opal, that you are also a data person, and I am a data person. I will always be asking the questions. There will always be critical thought. There will always be why. Show me the data, show me the law, show me why this is the right thing to do. Show me the alternatives that were considered. Show me why this is the best thing if we compare things like cost-benefit analysis or long-term goals or fitting into an overall comprehensive plan. There always has to be a reasoned, often an engineered solution to a problem. And with an engineering background, with a legal background, I'm always going to be looking for that. And I think, using data is a way that you can bridge gaps, is you are more persuasive if you are arguing with factual data, with irrefutable arguments. And so that's something that I'm hoping that all of us will be able to bridge, and always data. I see you, Stu. Thank you.
When I hold this up, you have 15 seconds.
Oh, okay. I don't know that data.
All right, so,
Raj?
well, thank you. So I'm a small business person, and I will be there to watch your pocket, your dollars. And that's what I do for a living. And at the same time, I'm a realtor. I know how to negotiate things. I can work across the aisle to negotiate the best outcome for you, the people, not for anybody else. And people before politics is how I will be serving you, and that's what I believe in, and that's what my part is.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, we're going to start with John. And the question is, as members of the County Council, you will be charged with evaluating many bills and resolutions prepared by the County Executive and his staff. You'll also have the opportunity to develop legislation for consideration. What, if any, legislation are you contemplating to submit in the first 6 months of your term? What will its effect be on those living east of 95? John?
East of 95, right?
Correct.
So I'll definitely look into zoning rewrite. So I'll be looking for ways how we can basically, first we need to have a review of the current ZRAs we have. We need to look forward, we need to look at if we need to make any changes to that. Secondly, I want to look into can we streamline our current zoning codes? I think we have a lot of zoning designations that we probably don't need, or they're overly complicated, or that's too complex. Oftentimes that presents loopholes or presents difficulties in terms of developments or going forward. So I want to make sure that whatever we do in the zoning rewrite, especially for residents east of 95, that we want to have public transparency in the decision making. We want to have as much public input and communication as possible, and then to get the right legislations in place.
Well, legislation in the first 6 months, that's going to be a tough one just because of the time frame. However, I think that things that could start and possibly get passed in that time frame would be a couple of things. One, Christiana, I hope I don't steal up thunder. We had a meeting this weekend in the county building, and there were no changing tables in the bathrooms. I have a baby, 2 babies actually, one infant, and there's usually no changing tables in the male bathrooms. So that's one thing that Christiana and I have talked about co-sponsoring. Another thing that I want to look at is the percentages. of minority business owners that are allowed to work on certain contracts. I heard that there's certain percentages, there's certain enforcements that are supposed to happen, and I've also talked to actual minority business owners who said that those things are not happening from the current county executive. So, I have a couple more things. That's 15 seconds. Okay. So that's one of the things I'm going to be taking a look at. Also, I'm going to look at a way to streamline the process of.
That's all. That's all she wrote. Liz?
I think there are some neighborhoods that can't wait for the zoning rewrite. And so some of the laws that I would look to strengthen in the very near term are the environmental and the other protections of sensitive ecological areas that we can strengthen right now without waiting for an overall zoning rewrite. And we do that by expanding buffer zones around stream beds. We do that by expanding buffer zones against scenic roads and adjacent properties and established neighborhoods that have a historic character that might otherwise be harmed by development. And we do that by eliminating waivers and eliminating laws that have the effect of granting waivers, like you're able to build infrastructure into wetlands without even asking for a waiver from DPC. Or you're still, even in the Tiber-Hudson watershed, allowed to clear large trees. 15 seconds. I also think there's an opportunity for us to do better in adequate public facilities ordinance, and I will be imploring my co-members on the council to do better in that regard, both in terms of adding things that are tested for and in lowering school thresholds.
Raj?
Well, the very first thing that I would do is try to figure out how will we be funding High School 14 and identify land for High School 14. And at the same time, yes, zoning rewrite, absolutely, John, is one of the most important legislation that will be coming in front of County Council that we do need to work on. And of course, we cannot forget our facilities. We need to make sure that we have enough funding to move forward with the bipartisan bill so that we can make sure that we are ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question, we're going to start with Opel. Oh, I'm sorry. Christiana. You don't have any points, why do you care?
I can't.
That's good.
It's up to you.
No. My problem. My problem.
No, it's fine. So I think some of the big things that we need to do are take a look at all of our taxes and fees and see what they are now, what we need them to be. And I don't mean that in like an increased taxes way. I mean, like we have a lot of fees in this county. Our impact fees, transfer taxes, a whole bunch of little itty bitty things and tax credits that we have. And I'd really like to see a comprehensive review so that we have sort of a much more holistic look, because right now it's all very piecemeal, and I think that that's very important going forward. The rewrite is a huge opportunity. I really want to review our affordable housing programs, like fee and lieu, allocation, soup to nuts. I mean, the whole thing. I want a very intense review because I think we can be doing a lot better for a lot of our workforce housing. I agree with Liz about the expansion of buffers, but I'd also add in attention to steep slopes. And the last thing I want to say is if you happen to take your baby to the George Howard building like I did a year and a half ago, you can now change your baby there. Because I complained long enough and loud enough.
Good. Okay, next question, Opel, we're going to start with you. Question is, in the Baltimore Sun 2 weeks ago, there was an article titled, Petition Urges Development Moratorium in Elkridge and Hanover. According to Peter Conrad, Deputy Director of DPZ, he states, quote, there are 2,272 proposed residential units in the Elkridge planning area, unquote. Do you agree the residents are correct that overdevelopment is a problem? And should there be a moratorium on overdevelopment areas in the county? Oh.
Thank you for the question. I do believe that there's a problem with development. I do believe that the problem with development, however, has not been countywide. It's been more so where we all live, toward the east. If you look at the numbers countywide, it's probably favorable to the general plan of 2000, and then the plan for 2030. But if you look at it on the east side, it's happening way too fast. So I think things need to slow down on our side of the county. Do I believe that there should be an actual moratorium on it? Well, I'm not so quick to say that there should be one. However, I think that we need to look at the numbers and make sure that it's slow enough. And if the data analysis comes back and it says that we should have one, then we should have one. But I don't believe that that's the case if it's slow enough and if developers are willing to pay their fees, pay their fair share, and have things in place for sidewalks and bike lanes and things that we need, bus routes and all that. So that's what I think should happen.
Thank you. Liz?
I think everyone in this room knows that it's too much development, and it's too much development focused in these neighborhoods. And we all know that the infrastructure that's there and should be there to support the new development doesn't exist, and in a large respect isn't even in planning. You know, High School 14 is a distant, far away dream almost, and plans to revitalize Route 1 are never fully funded. And so if we are going to allow development to continue at the pace that it has, then we need to invest in the communities where that development is happening on a proactive basis, not in this reactive, oh, there's a crisis, oh, there's 40% overcrowding in our high schools. Now we're finally going to pay attention to it. There's, I'm sure, a way to plan for development. There's a way to a plan for a good Route 1 corridor, but that hasn't happened historically. And without that, we're just asking for trouble. There's no way the existing infrastructure can accommodate the amount of building that's proposed in this area particularly. And I would just like Ellicott City, I would think that it is an opportunity to perhaps put a pause in while that infrastructure is developed.
Ron?
Well, thank you. Smart and thoughtful development is what I believe is needed. There are certain areas that we absolutely need to make sure we have a moratorium, and I actually emailed the county council when we had the moratorium bill to not only have at the 2 watershed, Tiger and Plumtree, we should expand it to other watersheds also, and at the same time, as everybody knows, that the date in 2022, High School 13 opens, it will be 100%. 100%. We need to start thinking forward rather than thinking just putting patches on things. And that's what we need to do. Let's look 10, 15, 20 years ahead of us, not a year ahead of us. Thank you.
So I agree that there are a lot of changes that need to be made. There are certainly a lot of planning issues. I totally admit to having been a little bit more focused on District 3, so the Elk Ridge people, please come find me afterwards so we can talk more about the issues in your community, because I've been mostly focused down here, so I don't experience them or live them like you, but I'm absolutely here to listen and understand where they're coming from. I really agree with Liz that it's a planning issue. If we had the infrastructure there, if we had the schools there, if we had the sidewalks we need and the public transit and everything that we needed to account for that infrastructure, I don't think we'd be feeling the pinch as much. But because over the past 4 years, the current county executive has taken $8 million away from Route 1, we're left with this position where we are feeling that pinch.
5 seconds. You want it?
I yield. I yield back my time.
Okay.
Can I have that 5 seconds? I'll trade it back. Okay, so if I may add a word to that moratorium, I would say I'm for residential unit moratorium for the greater Elk Ridge context. Now, I'll leave it to you on how exactly you define that context. But at least in the part, for the part of Elk Ridge in my district, I would definitely say yes. Let's put a stop on the residential development and then let's look into the commercial development. Now, for the segment of what I have in Elk Ridge, I think starting, we can do some small fixes like, adding traffic lights in locations where we need them. We need to do traffic light synchronizations, and then we can probably reroute some of the roads so then the crossroads actually make more sense, and then you don't have to do extra unnecessary reroutes. And then lastly, look into zoning, basically our zoning codes of TOD, CE, and CAC, so make sure we actually use all the things that we're allowed to do in there, not just residential units. Thank you.
Thank you. Start with you, Liz. The question is, what major mistake did the county council make during their term that you will correct when you were in office?
The last 4 years.
The last 12 years. The last 12 years, the county council, we don't care.
Okay.
Name one.
All right, just now, okay.
It's got to be one.
I'm going to say APFO. I mean, other jurisdictions use the adequate public facility ordinance to make sure that existing public infrastructure is there to receive new development. If you use that tool properly, then you have things like schools in place and roadways that can contain the traffic and sidewalks that let your kids walk to school and water and sewer that reaches capacity and doesn't put you in violation of federal requirements. You can even put things in like green infrastructure. Is there enough green space that we're still preserving in our neighborhoods? Is the stormwater management infrastructure adequate? These are the things that should be taken into account before we go into these massive building rampages, which I think in Elkridge we're there. And we're living through the consequences of not adequately planning for it. That's the tool. We should have pushed the thresholds lower. We should have included more factors in consideration, and we should enforce it. No waiting periods, no exception, no buy-ins.
Right.
Great. So over 12, 14 years, County Council has approved over 10,000 units on Eastern Howard County. Over 10,000 units without sufficient adequate public facilities. If you look at our roads, they are overburdened. You look at our other facilities, they are overburdened, overtaxed. And that is one of the things that I think County Council did not look forward without approving, when they were approving the residential, that how adequately we can make that work for public. And at the same time, the commercial use that's been taken out from eastern part of Howard County to make residential. I think that was one of the biggest mistakes that we've done, is taking out commercial. At this time, commercial is only 16%. We should be about 20% of the use. Thank you.
Christiana?
Okay, so 12 years is a long time, but I'm actually going to go kind of with Liz's answer about APFO. But I think one of the biggest issues that was noted in 2000 that it needed to be reviewed. So can you imagine the difference it would have made if it was reviewed back in 2000, and then 2006? 2010. I mean, there's just so many opportunities, and I think that that's a huge missed one for our county. But to give my own two original answers, I'd also agree CEF is a problem for my zoning friends. And then lastly, the $90 million TIF to downtown Columbia. It sections off that money and makes it so that we can't use it in case there, God forbid, is another flood or an incident that we need that money for. The pumpkin really feels like an end. I know it's like blooming, but I use the time.
Yeah, John.
No problem. So I think, at least in my district, in the last 12 years, what we have seen is a very unbalanced development. So on the one hand, we have overdevelopment, like Raj said, we have over thousands and thousands of developments just in the eastern part of the district. And we actually get a lot of these people to come to Howard High and Long Reach for school, and that's why Howard High is close to 140% over capacity and Long Reach is almost 130%. So that's one problem. Now on the other hand, we have underdevelopment. We need to have redevelopment in villages of Oakland Mills and Long Reach and other pockets, and especially Gateway. So I look forward to doing a lot of revitalizations for the villages. I'm open to innovative ideas, make it more inclusive, make it more business friendly for everybody, minority, women, small business owners and everything. And let's get our grocery stores, get our amenities, and get the business going in Gateway. Thank you.
I agree with most of what was said, and so to piggyback on everything that was said, stronger APFO, I think it should be reviewed more frequently. The most recent mistake, I would say, was the vote on the mobile home tax. I believe, hands down, that should have passed. I'm not quite sure about that, but I agree with what almost everyone said, in addition to that, the mobile home tax.
Thank you. Raj, you got the last question from us. Is there a real vision for the Route 1 corridor?
Is there a real vision in my eyes? Yes. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have more of commercial rather than so much of residential, that we rezone the commercial into residential. So that's one of the first things that we need to do. Number two, we've been doing TOD. So we're changing a lot of the commercial into TOD, which is thousands and thousands of homes. But when we talk about TOD, there's no transit. So how are you doing TOD without any adequate public facilities? There's no transit, and you're doing TODs. So those are some of the things that we really need to look at before we start doing these kind of legislations. We need to think ahead and then work on those. Thank you.
Go with the stand again. Are you asking, does the county have a vision for Route 1, or us as individuals, or both?
Either or, your choice.
Do I feel the county has a vision for Route 1 that is effective, that is paid attention to, that is funded? No, I don't. If they did, it would have happened already. Every time I've asked over the past, few years, the plan is being punted down the road, and I'm so tired of it, and I'm sure everyone in this room is here because you're tired of it too. It's ridiculous. We don't get the attention that other places in the county get. As far as what I think needs to happen, I think there absolutely needs to be a plan for Route 1, but we also need to have community plans. And I think that these community plans, so community plan for North Laurel and Savage, community plans for Elkridge, all the way up and down Route 1. And those community plans can be the foundation. We can figure out the overarching themes that all the communities have in common, and that can be the roof of our plan. But I don't think the county has had a plan that they've actually paid attention to, and they certainly haven't funded it. That's how I feel about that.
Mind if I stay up also for this one too?
Do anything you want, sir. You can dance if you want.
So, I think, everybody in this room would come all the way from Elkridge to North Laurel and Savage and the part of District 1 where Opel lives, and that's our district. So I think we have to, first of all, we have to look at the whole thing. We need to respect the environment, we need to respect the historic preservations, we need to respect the quality of life that people first move in here. Why are we on Route 1 in the first place? Then we start looking at by community, what does each community need. For Elkridge, recently we added the library, we added senior centers, and we added the new fire stations. So we're really building a sense of stronger Elkridge community, and this is why I'm also a strong supporter for High School 14, because 2 middle school, 3 elementary school in Elkridge, they deserve to have their own community. District 2, high densities, we need to look at, what can we go forward with it. We need to respect what we have already. And Savage, my respect to all the historical preservations and the lot size and the beautiful homes we have here.
So in preparation for being elected to the council, and especially in preparation for tonight, Route 1 corridor, that term is all throughout the general plan. But what has actually been done? So I don't want to fault anyone on the current council, but no one on the current council, nor the executive, nor the previous executive, has lived as far east as most of us live. However, once elected, you do represent the whole county. So you have that dichotomy there. And I just think it's important for us to fight for where we live. I think that the council, going back to an earlier mistake that the council probably made, they need to hear from the community more. I plan on holding quarterly town halls, if my wife lets me, having quarterly town halls in my district to hear exactly what's going on. What are we not doing right? Tell us about it so that we can enact it, we can write a bill, we can change a bill, we can amend a bill. The question, is there a vision for Route 1 corridor? I believe it's there, we just got to enforce it, like so many other things.
I think the vision, at least as many of our current politicians view Route 1 for revitalization, is an election year ploy. If you go back and look at Plan Howard 2030, it talks about all the things you already know we need here. Is focusing on commercial development, focus on building streetscapes, focus on building walkable communities that connect with one another. It never happens. Christiana alluded to it earlier. At the beginning of the last four-year council term, there was more than $8 million funded for Route 1 corridor revitalization under capital project C0285. That was defunded by more than $6 million in the last 4 years. And Jen Terrassa, who I think is in the back, formerly representing District 3, asked the hard questions at the last budget meeting to Val Lasdens, who even went so far as to say that private developers developing properties like the Roberts property, that was the county's revitalization of Route 1. That is not revitalization, that is not good government, that is not planning. We need to change that. We need to make the vision something for all of us.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to open it up to the audience. And this is not scripted in any way, shape, or form. So what I want to have is a volunteer to pick names out of the hat because most people don't trust me. So I'm going to ask a question, and that would be, who is the youngest in this audience? And I guarantee it's not me.
The twins.
Who is the youngest? That's what I say. Would you like to have the honor, young lady? You can sit right here, and I want you to pick out a name, and don't pick my name, okay? The first name is, you sure you picked the right name? Brent Lovelace.
From the
So Brent, where are you?
He's all the way up there.
Can you speak real loud? I know you can.
Yes, actually some of my questions were set aside. But we're along Route 1 corridor. We are seeing significant growth. You all have addressed it in some manner, but you've answered this in some regards, but specifically, what changes would you recommend to our ATFO criteria in order to accommodate fire, police, water, sewer, and other items that are not currently on the APFO testing thresholds?
Thank you, Brent. So I'm going to ask, who wants to go first? You have 5 seconds to go to make a decision. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. John?
Come on, guys. We're going to be the future council. We can't be hesitating like this, right? So to answer your question, Brent, I am in full support of adding all those components in the next AFO review. I think all these units, components are absolutely necessary. In addition, we need to look at innovative solutions, incorporating the new technologies we have right now. For example, we are going to have probably autonomous driving vehicles very soon, and then we probably need to adapt our infrastructures for autonomous drivings and those vehicles. And in high density settings like the ones we have in certain sections of Route 1, these things will be a good idea to incorporate in our FO and in our zoning as well.
Thank you. Anyone want to go? You all don't have to answer these questions. It's up to you.
All right.
I'm strictly volunteering.
Well, great, thank you. So, absolutely, we should have first responders in there. Also, we should make sure that we have enough hospital facilities with that too. Because guess what? If we have more people coming in, we need those facilities also. And at the same time, I agree that if we are, and if you're doing redoing Afro again, we should definitely make sure that we are changing any of the TODs. We need to make sure that we have enough transit before we can start changing, rezoning TODs also. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll go. So yes, but also I think that there are additional opportunities, not just within APFO, but within the rewrite to talk about ways to get additional public facilities. So for example, when you have very tall, very dense, very high buildings, they're going to need different types of fire trucks to access those buildings. So when we're putting in, they're happening already in downtown Columbia, and that train has left the station, but the fire department needs additional and different kind of support for those types of buildings because we don't currently have those kinds of buildings here in Howard County. So I think yes to including an APFO, but also looking at it and when it comes to our rewrite, let's think about how these changes are going to affect our community and how the rewrite is going to support support those changes.
To piggyback on what Christiana said, having talked to several firefighters, they don't holistically feel that building management as well as personnel as well as equipment is robust enough for success. If 911 is called or something happens and they're alerted, there are certain situations, and I don't understand it all, I want to understand it more, but there's certain situations where if this truck is here or this man-hour configuration, we just need more. We need more of it. They need to feel comfortable going out to the community and making sure we're all safe, which they do a fine job of doing, but we want to make sure it's on the top level. So I agree.
Yeah, we know from our professional firefighters that they are not meeting minimum standards in terms of both equipment and personnel in the stations. And we know even from most recent legislation passed by our Howard County Council that they have defunded projects to build new fire stations on Route 1. That is problematic. That is putting priorities in the wrong place. So I thought, Brent, you were going the other way, which was we can also affect change by zoning. And I think we need to, especially on the Route 1 corridor and other Main Street type applications, make sure that we are putting in and enforcing zoning that faces the street, that makes a special place, that connects to a continuum, rather than a berm or a stormwater pond right up against the street. We need the development, hopefully commercial, retail, to be facing the street, and again, inviting taxpayers.
Thank you all. Thank you, Megan. Becky, how you pronounce that name? Good, I'm glad you pronounced it right. Is that the right pronunciation, ma'am?
Yes.
Good, I'm glad you know that.
Okay.
You have it, just some. I just want to re-emphasize, 30 seconds to ask the question. Thank you.
Okay. Many of you mentioned High School 14. The county executive recently stated that funding for High School 14 during the construction of High School 13 in Jessup is, quote, not going to happen, and that we will fund High School 14 when it is needed. So I'd like to know, how will you determine when High School 14 is needed, and what are your specific plans for funding land acquisition for High School 14, including the recent $2 million annual acquisition fund that the DOE passed and recommended?
Liz?
We need High School 14 now. It's a matter of students that live in these communities now, and that's not even taking into account these projections. We need to have good data from Howard County Public School System in terms of what the reasonable projections of new kids in the schools are going to be, and then we need to be building schools for them. Again, not waiting for some kind of catastrophic failure or some really significant reduction in the quality of education that all of our kids need and that everyone who moves into our community expects. In terms of funding that new capital construction, we have to put the pressure on our state legislators and then on your council members in the next term to increase those school impact fees. Howard County charges a fraction of what other counties charge new developers to build into the system. I mean, we're creating a vacuum. It's no wonder that all the development happens here. It can be done cheaper here because we're subsidizing that development. We need to increase school impact fees.
Thank you.
Next. I agree with Liz. High School 14 definitely should be in the conversation. I'm not sure if Raj was the first one to say it. He may have been the first one to say it. I was thinking about it, but he may have been the first to get out with it. But yes, 13 and 14 needed to be discussed at the same time. I do feel, however, that redistricting is quite important. And that is an earlier tough conversation that the county needs to have with, and pressure the Board of Ed, not to blame any of our friends on the Board of Ed, but it doesn't make much sense to me, and I've said this at several forums and debates, that one school is at 130%, 5 minutes away, another school is at 70%. That just doesn't make much sense to me as a numbers person. So what needs to happen earlier than High School 13, which is still 3 years away, and High School 14, is redistricting. So that will help ease some of the crowding, ease some of the anxiety by teenagers bumping into each other in the halls. And then I think that the percentage of the budget increase needs to get back to where it was. Under our current county executive, that percentage has slowed down a bit,
So,
even though the actual dollar amount has increased.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay. So my friend here was thinking about it, but leadership is acting on things, not just thinking about things. But thank you. And at the same time, it's county council that funds, not the county executive. So we need to work as county council to make sure we fund that. We can, county executive can only ask for it. So we need to be proactive ourselves as county council to make sure that we have enough funds for it. And how are we going to have funds? Absolutely, we need to increase the back fees. And we need to go to our state legislators to make sure that we all make that work for them so that they are working for us. They need to make sure that they go out as state legislator and at the same time give us the authority to the county council to fund it.
I'd like to connect, if that's all right. So the county executive actually sets the number for the budget. So the county council can move it around, but schools cost millions and millions of dollars. So if the county executive doesn't put the funding in there, there's nothing you can cut enough to fund a school construction like that. In terms of how we're going to fund it, we absolutely need to create a dedicated fund. Right now, the school board can ask for any site in development, but the county executive then has to make sure the money's in the budget for the school board to then purchase it. And I learned that when I was really trying to get them to take a look at taking the milk plant site, which if you leave through Gorman and go out through Laio, is over there, and they had no interest in making a campus site. So, talk to me later, Becky.
So I'll add my last remark on this. So to credit to Raj, I think the first time I heard him talking about high school 14 was October 1st, 2017, and based to the best of my knowledge, that's the first time I have heard the term high school 14. So I just want to get that clear. I only have two things to say to this. Number one, we absolutely need high school 14 because I respect people. I think that people should have a choice. Now, they do have a choice to keep on going to Howard High or keep on going to Long Reach, but I think if we can open a high school 14 in Elbridge, people should have a choice there. And to reduce the commute time and then the traffic time, the kids have to go commute in buses. Number two, this is why I keep on saying we need to build up our commercial sector, we need to build our business base. Because right now, half of our revenue comes from property taxes. And so we need to diversify our funding and revenue streams, and that's why we need to build up the commercial sector.
Okay. We'll pick it on again. What's your name? Let's give a round of applause for Mackenzie. Terrific. What grade you in? I didn't know how to do this till I was in 10th. Next one is Jervis Dorgan. Where's Mr. Dorgan?
Yes, I was somewhat disappointed in the last Columbia flyer, which gave a list of all positions changing in the guard, it was called. In the whole of that two-page article, the name Columbia never came up. And Columbia is deviating from its original vision, and there's been substantial changes in the future. And I wonder whether you've given that any thought at all. Particularly, I'm worried about the future of the industrial parks. What will they be in the future? And also parts of downtown that are being rebuilt, like the lakefront. I wonder whether you've been thinking about that and whether it's on the radar screen, whether you understand how unique Columbia is because it's a planned community.
Who wants to go?
Before Christiana, I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat the first part about the word Columbia not appearing? Where was it?
Yes, in the Columbia flyer.
In which
Changing the guard,
changing the guard. Okay.
Yeah, and the whole two-page article, Columbia's never appears. John actually mentioned Oakland Mills, God bless him. That's where I am.
I mentioned Kingston Tribals. But my sister lives in Oakland Mills. So I think many of us talked to the reporter for a very long time, and they used less than a minute in total, which I think everyone can probably agree with. So my parents moved here in the 70s following the vision of Jim Rouse. So they're original owners in Owen Brown. Then they bought their first single family house. They're original owners, and they're still there today. and we moved about a mile from them. So we're just up the street, but we're sort of on the border of Columbia. I've worked with the Kingston Triumphs Village Board for several years. I've talked with Sherry Therrett. I think perhaps one of the biggest concerning things about Columbia is the fact that the next council and DPZ wants to include Newtown zoning in their rewrite, despite the fact that they did not do as deep a dive into Newtown zoning, which it's a very bizarre type of zoning that is like studied across the country for people who haven't read all 200 and whatever FDPs that exist, for the people in the room. Yes, it's very important to me.
Anyone else? Again, you don't have to answer these questions. We go on to the next one. It's up to you. I've got plenty of names for that.
Columbia is in our district, District 2. Some of the pressing issues that Columbia has and the county has at whole, it affects, I believe, the county, it kind of reverberates outward. Furthermore, the newer development, as we've all agreed to, is happening in the east side of the county, redistricting of schools. So I don't believe that anyone would slight Columbia by not mentioning it in that article. And as Christiana said, yes, I was on the phone with the young lady, who wasn't too polite, by the way, you probably had, for about 30 minutes, and she took about 3 sentences. So yes, I do believe that it's very important. All of Howard County is important to all of us on stage, as well as all of us in the room. So no slight to that.
Anyone else?
Here I'll go. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so, recording. That's okay. So, you live in Oakland Mills, correct? Okay, so given where we are now, things have changed a little bit since Ralph's first build or first plan for Columbia. But Columbia remains the highest density or the highest concentrations of housing throughout Howard County. I think we're at 41,000 houses or something like that. Now, given where Oakland Mill it is, my vision for Oakland Mill is it should be a garden village for all Columbia and Howard County. That should be, we should pushing for some of the latest concept in terms of farm to market, urban gardening, and push new ideas in that, so that we revive Oakland Mill as something very unique and exclusive that will attract outside traffic to come to Oakland Mills. Beyond Oakland Mills, we have usually throughout Columbia, we need to look at the 4 jurisdictions, starting with HOA, CA, the county taxes, and basically homeowners' responsibilities.
Time's up, sir. Time's up. Thank you.
These are really not too many questions.
It's okay.
Well, Columbia is absolutely an important part of Howard County. I can't tell you why I shouldn't use Columbia word, but hey, everybody has first right amendment, so they can write whatever they want to do. But at the same time, I think we definitely need to work on Columbia in terms of traffic, because I know that as soon as you go on Little Production Drive, you're just stuck for half hour. So we need to definitely work on that. And at the same time, I think what we do need to do is work on Columbia Gateway Drive to make sure that we have more commercial and let's think smartly how we will develop that 1,000 acres that are out there in Columbia Gateway Drive.
Thank you.
So the 3 things that would most worry me as a which does include Dorsey Search in Columbia, is making sure that we are maintaining equity in our schools, across all of the schools in our public school system. And we do that by ensuring that funding is going where it is, and resources are going where they're needed. And that will be of highest priority to me in the next 4 years. And then 2 other things that I associate most closely with Columbia, having grown up here or around here, is the village centers. And I know that some of them are struggling, and I know that when the county council and government turns its attention to them, it tends to be for big dollars. So I think we have to be really careful and sensitive in terms of how we allow development of those village centers to proceed, and that we're supporting them in a way that would comport with a historic Columbia vision. And the third thing I noticed as these higher density, high-rise things built in, is there is not an appropriate accommodation for public transit. There's talk about having a TV downstairs that talks about the different bus routes that you could ride and maybe a bike rack. That's not planning for public transportation. We need to do better.
Thank you all. Okay, because this audience has been so well behaved, anyone wants a bottle of water? So, we have plenty of water here if you want. Just come on up.
It's a horrible hostess who fails to give the comfort announcement at the beginning of the session. Restrooms are located through the exit sign here, and there are also additional restrooms if you go down the staircase and turn to the left. When you started offering water, I thought it was a good time.
Okay, next question. You want your sister to have a chance? No? That made the night right there. That's beautiful. She's running for county council.
That's right, for executive.
District 6. Marcy Isaacs? Where's Marcy?
That's me, but,
You're up.
the question I had planned to ask was vision for one, but I have many more questions. I feel that
You got 30
we
seconds.
had visions for route one for ages, and I'm not asking this question of Christina, but the other candidates, how do you see supporting, I live in District 3, how do you see supporting Christina in the Route 1 revitalization of District 3?
I'll go first. So, I plan on supporting Christiana, who, by the way, is the only one.
Sorry.
She's the only one who's has my position, so she's already on the council. So I can say council member, councilwoman Rigby. I plan on supporting her by working with her, talking to her, having meetings. I believe if we're in the majority, we have to have someone from the county or a reporter there. I want to meet more as far as conversations than just the council sessions or just the work sessions. So when it's time, and my wife is now here, so she'll maybe allow me or not. But when it's time to meet and talk more, whether it's via conference call or whether it's in person, whether it's at a coffee shop, we need to just work these things out. Waiting for bi-weekly meetings may not be enough. Furthermore, once all of us, or whoever is elected, we serve the whole county. So we need to work with each other, not only Christiana, but District 5, District 1, we need to all work together, stay in touch with our state delegation, and I believe that comes in with just having to work in relationships and keeping our eyes and ears open about what we need to do. So I think we're going to support each other very, very well on both sides of the aisle, I might add.
Anyone else?
Well, we're all up here because our district spans some part of Route 1, and it's not as though you would drive to the end of District 1 and traffic congestion or a failure to plan for streetscape and placemaking would immediately stop up. I think all of us, in large part, would agree that it is a matter of agreeing on the overall plan, making adjustments to highlight the best features about a given community as you drive north or south, and then investing in it, in incremental values over a long term, looking towards the future. We obviously can't get it all done in the first year, but we can get it done in 5 or 10 or 15 years, particularly if we make the investments together, working towards a common goal.
Thank you.
So people before politics is how I will serve you. I will work across the aisle, and my vision for Route 1 is that we need to live, work, play, and educate our children within Howard County. So I will do the maximum that I can to reach out on the other side to ensure that we have a great implementation on the plans. Thank you.
So first of all, I would ask Christiana to give me a tour of her district, starting with the Savage to Laurel, Route 1, and then going to King's Contrivance, and then Hammond High School, Appleton's, Allview. And in return, I will give her a tour of my district from Oakland Mills all the way to Hanover. And, so we both have, experience on the ground and see actually what we have here. And then let's pull up our maps and then review, maps starting with the plannings and the zonings and other issues that we're probably going to talk about. And beyond that, and talking to other council members, I think, it would be good to talk to the county executive, the Board of Education, and other entities of governments, including the state. And then because, we have several jurisdictions overlapping each other, and I think it would be good to have very open conversations through all.
Thank you. Kenzie, come on. Carrie Lee? Carrie? You're up.
My question is, how would you reach state and federal funding in the Route 1 revitalization? And I'm thinking be specific, and I'm thinking if you could talk a bit about the role of state highways in the SHA.
So at the State Highways Roadshow, which they bring along every year, we need to have, I think one of the biggest things we could do would be to have a huge turnout. Because they'll see that it really matters. You get a little nervous when there's a big crowd in Montgomery County. They had a dinosaur show up. I'm serious, you can Google it. And it was a really big deal because people were invested and engaged. So I think one of the biggest things that we could do as council members is actually to act as community organizers and make sure that you know when big things are happening, when we need your voices, when we need you flooding the council with emails, or flooding the county executive, or flooding their state delegates, or flooding our federal appointees. I mean, there are issues up and down, and we've got to consider when we add transit in. Oh gosh. Okay. But just want to say that there's sustainable communities. Okay, sustainable communities under the Department of Housing. We are eligible here in North Laurel and Savage for that money, and it has not been asked for. And I don't know if that's because the county executive doesn't want to match it or why, but we are eligible and we deserve that funding for that specific program.
Liz?
So I can give two examples of state funding. One we actually are entitled to right now for not such great reasons, which is we have a tendency to harm and even kill people on Route 1 right now because of how dangerous it is and how many more pedestrians we have on that roadway trying to cross that roadway. And so because of that, State Highway Administration has actually become involved and has issued quite recently a safety plan where they are willing, I think, to fund as much as 50% of the cost in order to increase safety in what has now become a very dangerous corridor. On the upside, there is a state program called Complete Streets, which if you qualify for it by incorporating things like stormwater management, pedestrian and bicycle pathways, then you again qualify for some state funding that would enable you to do what I think most of us think should be done on Route 1 anyhow, which is make a walkable, connected space between communities. And we should be going after those hard. If I still have time and Stu's not holding up the pumpkin, I'm going to talk about program Open Space, which is we should be going after any pocket of money and grants and funding that lets us set aside the limited green space we have left and preserve it from further development.
Thank you.
In addition to what was already said, I believe that working with our state legislators, having, for instance, the town halls that I want to hold. So my wife is now here, baby. I said I was going to have quarterly town halls in District 2. Hopefully she'll let me. We'll talk about that later. But inviting the state legislators to that meeting, if not, if they can all make it, making sure it's recorded to be able to say, these are what the constituents want. This is what you have to do. One of the most confusing and beautiful things is that all of our districts overlap. So our District 2 overlaps with 13 and federal, and you have United States Federal 2, 3, and 7, and it's all crazy, the lines are all crazy, but there's several people that may handle one particular stretch of road like Route 1. And I think it's time for us to have those conversations. Personally, I live in Howard Square, so we need to hold developers accountable if something comes that's new, to make sure that there's bike lanes and sidewalks there. It is an absolute must, and we as council people will have the power to do that. Howard Square, when it was built, there's a sidewalk that leads right to the gas station, right to the corner of 175 and 1, as well as a bike lane. There's no reason that shouldn't be able to happen all around the world.
But so far, there's been good partnership with state legislators, but we need to increase that. We need to ensure that there is an open dialogue between the state legislators and us as county councils. and including executive also, because it impacts everybody. And at the same time, I think what we also need to work on is Route 1 safety, although we have, now we have a safety plan, but we need to implement that, right? So we need to work on that. And I think we can make it work in next council, absolutely.
Okay.
If I may just add my 2 cents onto this. Actually, I would like to recognize, I think we have a state delegate candidate, Mr. Chris Yates in the room. And then we have actually a congressional candidate, Ms. Liz Muttery in the room. So we look forward to working with you to take care of our state and federal matters. Actually, I would like to give people at the state and the federal a tour again on Route 1, so you can have it visually and have a feeling of what we have to deal with. So safety components in Route 1, that's an absolute must. We need to have a thorough review of that, and we need to have our pedestrian walkways and make it pedestrian friendly. And on top of that, we need to have our amenities added in, so people don't have to all drive around just to get basic and essential needs. Secondly, we really need to work on, as I mentioned before, we need to incorporate new technologies, because autonomous driving and autonomous parking, I've seen demos just like 2 weeks ago at the Baltimore Stadium, and it's coming, and we need to be ready for that. And thirdly, I would say, not just on the ground.
That's all.
That's all? Okay, thank you.
Since John mentioned something, I was going to do this a little bit later, but I'll do it now. I know some faces here that are running for office, so if you would like, you can stand and say your name and what you're running for.
And I'm running for school board in Howard County, and I look forward to your support. Thank you.
I'm Sean Conley. I'm running for the Register of Wills, and I appreciate your support in November as well. Thank you.
I'm Lisa Kim. I'm running for County Council in District 4.
This is better than going to the gym.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Fitch. I'm running for Judge of the Orphans Court.
Hello, I'm Chris Hicks. I'm running for Delegate District 13, your district.
Natalie Robinson, and I'm a write-in candidate for the Board of Education. I look forward to your vote. Thank you.
I'm Jen Taras. I represent this district today and the County Council. I'm running for State Delegate in District 13.
My name is Rich Gibson. I'm running for State's Attorney for Howard County. Anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Mattori. I'm running against Dutch Rubersberger in District 2. So we need all the help we can get. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? I'm Stu Cohn. I'm running for nothing because no one would ever vote for me to begin with. Okay. The next person is, looks like Fred.
All right, so I guess what I would like to posit is that in some ways the distinction of Route 1 is a separate entity. It's kind of an artificial boundary. So I guess I would like to suggest that you. So I'll give two examples. One is that I think that essentially Howard County has a very powerful brand. It's strong schools, public safety, strong economy, focus on people and the environment. And yet somehow they're treated as if we're different than the rest of Howard County. And I think that that should be part of our vision, is that we should be treated, and our vision should become like the rest of Howard County. And the other example I would give is that I think that the county and the state have artificially constricted our ties to the surrounding jurisdictions, such as the surrounding counties, and we have artificially constricted the flow of people, goods, and services from places like Fort Meade, which everybody knows is a very powerful economic engine, but if you look at what actually happens, it isn't there. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
So I think part of of your question is about how we fit into Howard County, and the other part is how we fit into the region.
And the government should be removing those restrictions and encouraging the flow across here.
Absolutely. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm a bridge builder, so I've reached out to people who are running for office, who are likely to be elected in Anne Arundel County, in Prince George's County, in Montgomery County, in Baltimore County, because we're still part of that region and we connect to these other places. And I have not reached out to anyone in Frederick County. I'm sorry for the people who are here from the West. But it is vital that we have those relationships, that we build those connections, because we're not, I think we've been operating in a vacuum to some extent, but that doesn't mean that as a community and as a county we operate in a vacuum. So I think that, darn pumpkin.
15 seconds.
So I think that that's very important that we build those relationships, to have those kinds of conversations, and integrate us into the rest of the county.
Opel? You got a...
Piggyback on what Christiana said, I believe those relationships are very, very important to forge. I do think that my wife and I are both transient residents wherein we work outside of the county. And I know that that is the case with most of our neighborhood. People we talk to, we see them leaving early in the morning, if we're walking the dog at 6:30. People are flying down to DC or going up to Baltimore. So, though Howard County is a special place, everyone wants to be here, it's the best place to be. Columbia and Ellicott City keep getting ranked like the best in the galaxy. I think that it's important to understand that there are people that are here just for a short amount of time, whether morning and evening or weekends to live. And as we go back and forth, the roads that are used and the transportation, all of that works hand in hand. So talking to Prince George's County, Montgomery County, even DC, and understanding like, hey, yes, we're this beautiful nested place in the middle of Baltimore and DC, but we can be better interconnected. So I do think those relationships should be better.
I think our proximity to Fort Meade gives us so many residents in the military community who decide that this is the place where they want to retire and raise their family. My own dad did that. Wasn't stationed at Fort Meade, but he was in the United States Army, and when it was time for him to retire, which is at a relatively young age for those of us who are in the private sector and have to work pretty much till we die. They chose Ellicott City, they chose Howard County, they chose District 1, this is where they were going to live, and I come back. That is a wealth of populace. Those are people who are then going to have a second career and bring more vitality and more expertise into our community. So I definitely think we want to be bridging to NSA, Fort Meade, and always cognizant of the fact that they are employers both in and of themselves and employers of the second generation careers. And then north, on the north side of, is that the stop talking list? Or that's
15 seconds.
Route 1 actually goes into Baltimore County. So for District 1 particularly, that's where our allegiance is with Baltimore County on the other side of the bridge across the Patapsco River. We share the Patapsco State Park, we share the national road that crosses the bridge. There will always be alliances there that we should treasure.
Raj?
Okay, so 32 years ago, June 12, 1986, is when I landed in Howard County, and I'm still here. So I know that this is one of the best counties to live in. And that's why I'm still here. And at the same time, that's the vision that we need to have. Live, work, play, and educate our children within Howard County. We definitely need to work with all our regional partners. Personally, when I was a restaurateur, I was part of tourism, Howard County Tourism, and we used to have restaurant weeks in conjunction with Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Montgomery County. So I'm kind of used to helping out and at the same time working with other counties, so I know a lot of people around that. So that's how I saw it. Thank you.
Okay, so my priority is that as the DC and Baltimore corridor is being built, and I think everybody who live close to Route 1 and who go to Anne Arundel, Fort Meade, Baltimore know that's happening. So my priority is to make sure that our county gets our share of that pie, of that growth of corridor. So, and BWI is going to be becoming an even bigger international airport. We're going to expect more traffic coming into this particular area. And so, I have repeatedly stressed that building the economy, building the commercial sector is the priority here. because that's how we're going to get a new source of funding. And that's going to attract people here and export our goods and services here. People come to Howard County for all our goods and services, and let's figure out how to do more value add so then we can strengthen our economy here. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenzie, please. Jorge,
Thank you, Stu.
30 seconds, sir.
In the name of the patriotic, honorable purpose, I believe that Republicans and Democrats in the local, state, and federal governments alike should help the students with disabilities get their jobs and make their own friendships to governmental help. And so if I was asking you, I'm asking you, if you were elected to be the county council members, will you do anything to get the students with disabilities their jobs and their friends if you were to become bipartisan?
Thank you, Jorge. So I have sat in many a George Howard Building meeting where you've asked a question, and this is the first time that I get to be asked one by you, so I appreciate that. I will do a lot of things to support students with disabilities, both in terms of workforce, but also in terms of housing, because housing for adults, young adults with disabilities is a huge problem here. I cannot begin to tell you, I can tell you it doesn't fit on my hands. The number of parents I talked to at their door who said, my child has a disability and I'm very worried about what's going to happen to them after I die. I mean, just think about it. So many parents and so many kids are feeling that concern because we don't have that safety net here, and it needs to be better. We can do better. We can keep our kids here. We can keep their families here. We can make sure that they have the opportunity to have access to employment, to safe housing, to healthy options, to everything that they need to live a supported and sustained life. Because, thank you.
Anyone else?
So, as I've said in one of my platforms, I am about innovations and inclusions. And that's people with disabilities, all ages, people with disadvantages. And that disadvantage could be sometimes communication with language, sometimes getting the ideas out, or just simply being afraid to speak up. So as a new council member, my door will always be open. I can make you this promise. And there are a lot of resources in the community. Now, I'm always open to talk. I'm always listening to ideas. Anything, I will do my best to help out. And if I can, I know where to find resources and personnel and volunteers to help with the situations. And again, we want to be inclusive. Want innovations coming out of all the inclusions and bridge the gap.
Thank you.
And I believe all of us would agree, in addition to what Christiana and John said, I believe all of us would agree that students with disabilities moving into the workforce, whether you're going into community college, whether you're working, exactly what you're doing, whatever we're doing now, we need to make sure it continues and increase, find creative ways to make sure the funding is there. And is it Jorge?
Yes,
Jorge,
that's me.
On November 7th, if I'm elected, on November 6th, if I'm fortunate to be elected, I'd like to talk to you on November 7th to find out exactly what it is, what your concerns are, and we'll get the ball rolling.
Yes?
Thank you, Jorge. I think we all want to support independence of students with disabilities. We want to make sure that you have places to live that are safe and that are accessible. We want to make sure that you have transportation to places like schools and grocery and jobs. We want to incentivize even local small businesses to hire on and train you to be an active and successful contributor to our community, because you are important. Thanks, Jorge.
Raj?
All right.
Yes, Raj.
I have a family member who is also in that situation. And my cousin, Ahmed, he is 40-year-old and he acts and talks like he is maybe about 5 or 6. So I understand the health and disability issue. I have always been, through my restaurant, been the gold sponsor for ARC, their chocolate ball every year. So I absolutely understand that situation, and I will do whatever it takes, including giving funding, additional funding to, through county council. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Donald.
R20 allows 2 homes per acre, whereas 55 plus housing is much higher density. Developers are exploiting the 20 to 55 plus loopholes and inconsistencies to rapidly push through infill development in small parcels, disrupting the existing communities and potentially aggravating growing issues for the county at large. In the near and long term, as the retiree blip will pass in 2 decades, until the completion of the code rewrite now underway, would you support a moratorium on building 55 plus housing as infill on small parcels in existing R20 communities?
Did you get that?
Yes, so I live, there is one of those types of communities going in at the corner of Edenbrook and Guilford. And I will say I actually do support that specific project, mainly because I've talked to a lot of residents in Kingston-Trivens who want to stay in Kingston-Trivens, but their homes don't allow them to stay in them. So for projects that are near resources and amenities like grocery stores so that they remain walkable, places that are small enough that they're not going to do huge traffic burdens, that I support. Creating islands of 55 plus communities that are stripped away from community support or access to additional resources or far away with zero public transportation, which you'll need as people age to the point where they become mobility limited, that I don't support. So there's one I know of that I do support, but it's really conditional on a lot of the resources. It needs to fit.
Anyone else?
Really quickly, just to add, I think that, and not to get off topic, but aging in home or aging in house is, I really want to have the code take a closer look at that, especially if the senior is already living with a spouse or a family member, and the children want to take care of the spouse, want to take care of them in-house. I think that that's important too. Slowing down development is definitely key. An actual moratorium on 55 plus with small parcels. I'm not sure if I can support that right now, but I'll be happy to take a look at it and just to see exactly how everything is structured. But definitely, slower growth is definitely needed.
I think just calling a community 50 plus shouldn't exempt it from otherwise applicable zoning and land use regulations. And I think there's an entitlement there that if I change it from regular old land use or super high density, everybody can live there with kids, then all of a sudden you don't have to comply with environmental laws, or you can get an extension of public water and sewer, and you need to change the rules. I think so long as you're building in something that fits into your neighborhood and you're not taxing existing infrastructure, then fine. But just simply calling yourself an over 50 community should not exempt you from applying the same laws that should apply to everybody.
Well, in 2, maybe 3 years, I will be in that statistic. So, not giving out names, but I absolutely agree that we need to look at the adequate public facilities to ensure that we can support any development. And I do understand that we do not need school tests and for that, but at the same time we need to make sure that we have roads and we have first responders that we can do that. And at the same time, I think what we do need to also look at is that we all should be able to retire in Howard County. So we need to live, work, play, educate our children, and also retire within the county. Thank you.
Anyone else want water? It's free. There you go. Okay.
So I'll just add my last remark to that question. So first of all, I respect people's lots, and I'm personally in favor of preserving the size of lots that we have in a lot of communities along Route 1 and in most of Columbia right now. However, I do respect people, what they want to do with their property. If they want to move away or they want to sell it, I respect that. Along the campaign trail, I've met several residents who are looking forward to moving out and then selling their properties, and then developers buy them. I respect their property rights. Now, going into it, this is why the review of zoning codes and AFO is very critical going forward in the future, because in certain places where we lack basic amenities, maybe it's not a very good idea to have higher density units go in just because they're labeled 55 plus units. So this is why it is very critical to review the rewrites of new zoning codes thoroughly.
Thank you, John. Next person has a question is Paul Goldenberg. Paul, you here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, that was my concern. I always assumed that one role of the Department of Planning and Zoning was to assess recent trends involving weather patterns and cumulative impacts of development, and identifying implemented solutions. We recently learned that your role is largely confined to examining individual projects for compliance with existing regulations, mostly based on data from 1980 to 2010. Who among you, the county, will provide the forward-looking, big-picture leadership and planning needed to build Howard County's preparedness and resilience?
So, thank you for that question. Immediately, using data from 82, I mean, come on. I'm a data person, I'm a numbers person. I believe all of us up here have the wherewithal and the aptitude to look at these hard questions. I believe that Liz would be the most qualified given her background, but I'm a data guy as well. And I think that it's important to understand, to be able to see it, have the specialty and the subject matter experts there, but to be able to digest it, to say, okay, this is not good enough. We need a workforce, we need a task force, we need a committee, only a short amount of time because this has to get out. That needs to happen more regularly. I think that pushing numbers to the side or pushing something that we may not be familiar with to the side, though this is a part-time, and some of us still have jobs, being able to take our time in the nights and in the evenings to be able to learn it, digest it, and do what we have to do with it. I think we all have the leadership for that, but I'm definitely qualified for that.
Anyone else? You don't have to. Go ahead.
Well, I think I was just going to say that throughout the long campaign season, we've really had the opportunity to have a lot of these conversations. And Liz and I have talked about, concerns around steep slope development, concerns around stream buffers, the fact that, some people might say they're not climatologists, but that's why we can listen to climatologists. It's important that we look ahead. We know that climate change is happening, whether you agree on why it's happening or not. So what needs to happen is that we need to have a better relationship when it comes to our land, when it comes to how we move around. All of these things are happening, whether we like it or not. We are getting more subtropical thunderstorms, which means that more and more of our communities are at risk. And it's not just Ellicott City. It is Jeff, it is Allview, it is Savage, it is anywhere that is downstream. We are all at risk.
Thank you.
So I think,
No reply, please.
So I think, like Opel said, all of us here all have the aptitude of reviewing data, and then we do have the skills to resolve the problems in a systematic and constructive way. To me, my background training in infrastructure, when I was doing my trainings and my work experience in infrastructure planning, we always look at all the situations we have right now, quantitatively and qualitatively, and then we have a projection of what the future, what we can expect and the variables we're looking into. So beyond just looking at the current data, we also need to set policies and goals of how we're going to change the data and when are we expect those to go in, and then work backwards and see what are the measurements that we can do right now to make sure that we achieve our policy goals in the future that we set it. So going forward, there will be seniors, students, immigrants, and then problems of overcrowding, housing, education, and jobs, and then we need to look at setting policies to address these issues.
Okay.
I think we have to be proactive, and we have to make sure that if we don't have the subject matter experts at Department of Planning and Zoning, that we get them. And that whatever our plan is, that we take to task the person who's in charge with seeing what our vision is, seeing what the long-term goals are, and making sure that we are keeping up with them. Because I think so many times we put a plan on paper and it disappears. I think there needs to be regular accounting. Was this data good? Were these assumptions good? Are we moving towards our goal? And I think particularly with DPZ, there is a tendency to just accept that how things are done in the past is how we should do them going forward, and I think that needs to change. I think, again, we need to engage real subject matter experts who perhaps are not resident at Department of Planning and Zoning now, and we need to make sure that they are staying on their charge and moving the county towards a more resilient and sustainable community.
Okay?
So, we had Plan Howard 2020 came and went. We had Plan Howard 2030 almost about to go away, because guess what? In another few years, we got to start thinking of Plan Howard 2040. But that's all we've been doing is Plan Howard, but we've never acted upon it. So we need to start thinking smartly and acting upon those things. Leadership is acting, not just planning. We spend money on committees and plannings, and this and that, but we never act. So that's what we need. We need somebody who's going to act for you and get things done. Thank you.
Thank you all. Frank Marcus? Where's Frank?
Great, thanks. I only have one question, but I think it has 32 parts.
Couldn't count the third one, sir.
That's a movie line, right? I think so. So it does have a couple parts. Would you be willing to exercise eminent domain to acquire a school site? Why or why not? Does it matter if it's a residence or if it is a business?
I think the fact that we even have to ask that question is part of the biggest problem. Like, why are we at a point where we now have to consider eminent domain? I mean, when we're talking, please, go find Plan Howard 2030 and search the words school site, because you're not really going to find it. It's in like a little tiny, it says, we should talk with people about school sites. It's so vague. And clearly we have an issue with school sites. I'm not sure who it was, but somebody perhaps here from Elkridge has like all of the PDFs going back from the Board of Ed testimony about when a high school is needed in Elkridge. And it's been known that it's a problem for a long time, and yet even in the general plan when we come to talk about school sites, it's not really addressed. So I think that's one of the biggest problems, that we're not effectively planning ahead. I'm not necessarily at a point where I would say absolutely yes or absolutely no. I think it does matter if it's a residence.
That's all. Sorry. Anybody else?
So my answer for residential would be no. My answer for business or commercial would be no, but at a absolute last resort, maybe. However, I do not think that eminent domain would necessarily be needed. We need to redistrict some of these schools, get the overcrowding taken care of, and get the funding for sites for the schools. It's doable, the money can be found, and we need to be courageous enough to stand up to certain stakeholders and say, your school will no longer be at 70%. It needs to be a little bit more because it's a school that's 2 seconds away driving, that's at 130%. So that's the first thing. But to answer your question, generally no, only at a last resort.
I think it is a tool that government has, and you can use that as leverage, particularly in the commercial setting. If a property owner knows that a given community has identified a site as desirable for siting, for example, a high school, then the government can go to that commercial owner and say, look, this is good for the community, and there are certainly tools the government can use to incentivize that owner perhaps to relocate somewhere else, always with the big hammer of eminent domain behind it. I agree that it is a tool of last resort.
Thank you. Raj?
So I believe in your property rights, okay? I would not use eminent domain as a tool. As a realtor, I understand that there always can be a negotiation, okay? And that's where we need to start. Everything is for sale for the right price. And that's what we need to look at, that we cannot just go and get somebody's property rights. We need to work with that. And for public good, I know people would work with us. And that's what we need to do. Thank you.
So this is what I will say. More than 20 years ago, eminent domain was exercised to build a major parkway across my district. The owner was reluctantly had to accept it. And she accepted with so much sorrow that she never cashed her the amount paid to the escrow account. Until she died, she never really cashed that out. That should never ever happen again. Not for anything. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. We're going to have one more question. We're going to have 1 minute for closing. So the last question will go to Steve Singer.
The Department of Planning and Zoning seems to consider itself mostly an administrative entity, and they limit themselves primarily to the enforcement of existing rules. The ambiguity in the rules has led to the use of the age 55 plus as an infill with much higher densities. Since Department of Planning and Zoning won't do it, would you be willing, while the rewrite of the rules is going on, to impose a moratorium until the new, less ambiguous rules are in place?
Who wants to tackle that one? I dare you.
Warmed up now, so I just jump in now. So, because there are a few, it really depends on the project. That's the biggest issue.
No, the moratorium doesn't depend on the project.
Well, the issues, the impact of 50+ communities as they function on infill does depend on location, on the project. So it's a very dependent issue for me. There are some that I see that I think, yes, this fits within the character of the community. It's more dense than the immediately adjacent property. It's more dense than the property it replaced. But it's not so far out of character that I think, what on earth is it doing here? And I also don't necessarily think that my whim should be zoning code, but I think that it is important that we have single level options for seniors to age within our community. We're aging at twice the rate of any other county. We are becoming essentially a sandwich county where we have a senior population that's very needs dependent and a county that has a lot of school-age children that are very need dependent. The pumpkin has spoken.
Anyone else?
So let me address your question maybe as simply as I can, as the pumpkin will allow me. So, as I have said before, we have too many zoning codes and zoning designations. And one of them, at least in my district, on Route 1, we have the CACCOI, the CEs, the TODs. And then if you look at the zoning codes for all these designations, they have a whole list of things that you can build, and then these are requirements. But then over the last 2 years, apparently we can issue ZRAs that would, get around it, and then we will have, nothing, we don't have to do a lot of these amenities, we don't have to fill requirements, and then we just feel as, that we see fit, or somebody sees fit. So going forward, we need to I would look into reviewing the zoning designations, get rid of the ones that we don't need, streamline them, and then get the right zoning codes and actually enforce them, and then make them work.
Opel, you want to go?
Yes. Were you about to say something else?
No, you go.
It's going to be an entirely new council, and I can say that whoever's on the council, we're going to be tough. Would we fight for a moratorium, exactly how you described it? I can't answer that question now, but we would definitely be open to looking at anything that's going to be in the betterment of the people. Again, it's going to be 5 new council members. That hasn't happened since 2006. There may be a new county executive, I'm hoping so for sure, but it's going to be a situation where we're going to be looking at everything holistically, and we're going to make some tough decisions.
Yeah, I think moratorium is a drastic measure, and I think it is warranted in an emergency situation where, for example, we kill people due to flooding in Opel City, or where we know that we have overcapacity schools that are looking at more than 2,000 new units building into the same communities. I think that that's where an emergency measure is warranted. I don't know if we're there, countywide or district-wide on 50-plus communities, but our campaign pretty early on called for an audit of DPZ, because I don't know, and John mentioned it, that DPZ actually is enforcing the laws. And again, I do think there is this entitlement that if you call it 50-plus, then there are rules that don't necessarily have to be complied with regard to density, but also just with regard to how the land is laid out and its relationship to the community. So definitely audit DPZ, make sure that the rules that we have are actually being enforced with regard to those communities, and look to see where emergency measures might be necessary.
Same here. I think we do need to look at not using the drastic measures, and at the same time we need to look at rewriting the zoning code. That should be where we should start. And at the same time, we absolutely need to look at the adequate public facility to ensure that we have enough public facility to be able to support the projects before we even think of doing anything else. I think that's a good start for me, is to look at the adequate public facility first, and then based on that, do that. Thank you.
Okay? So, I want 1 minute for your closing, but before you do your closing, I don't want anyone to leave yet. Kinsey, because you did such an outstanding job, which I appreciate very much, I want you to have this. You are terrific. You really are. And I'm sure your sister is also, even though you didn't want her to come up here. Now,
well, you should have given out a gold.
I'm not giving anything to you, sir. Yes. On the grounds of being incriminating me. So, I'm going to start with Opel. You go first for your 1 minute closing.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much to the Savage Community Association, the residents of Savage, Madam President Susan Garber, wonderful moderator, everyone who's here, all the candidates who's on stage here with me. I'm running in Council 2 as Democratic nominee. I'm going to fight for the people. I'm going to continue to do what I've already done with the Human Rights Commission and the community service. I want to make sure that all voices are heard, and even though we may have different political and ideologies, whoever is elected on the council, along with the county executive, I do believe that all of us are going to work together for the people, and that's what I promise to do. My door is always open. You can email me, find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My phone number is public. My wife doesn't like it, but it's 410-300-4822. Call me, text me. I'll answer it the best way I can. And I'm a learner. I'm a teacher by trade, but I'm also a learner. I'm a constant learner. So things that you want to talk to me about that I may not know about, let's have a conversation. Let's have coffee, like I've done with a couple of you in the audience. Let's figure this thing out. We're going to move Howard County forward.
Liz?
I echo thanks to Stu and Susan and those of you who organized this. It's so nice to be in a setting like this and talking about all of the historical preservation and conservation green space type issues that got me into this. But mostly I want to thank you guys who are here. It's getting late, we're coming off an election season, and the fact that you're here speaks in volumes in terms of how informed you are and how engaged you are. And I assume that that means you have some significant influence in your communities. So I would ask you as informed, engaged voters to take what you've heard tonight and get the word out that this election particularly matters. It matters at the local level. It matters in terms of getting our schools back on track, making sure our neighborhoods are safe and cared for, and making sure that we're being good stewards of our land and the limited green space we have left. Thank you. Liz Walsh, running in District 1.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the HCCA and also the Savage community for doing this. This is a very important election for all of us. This election determines the future of Howard County. As we all know, that we will have all 5 new council. We need to ensure that we have proper funding for schools. We need to work on overcrowding of our streets. And we need to bring in smart development within Howard County so that we can live, work, play, educate, and retire in our community. I have been the advocate of High School 14 from the beginning, while everybody was still debating about High School 13. And people before politics is how I will serve you. I ask for your vote on November 6th. And you can vote on my website, voteforhorizon.com. Thank you.
John.
So, about a month ago, I attended the HCCA forum for County Council candidates District 4 and District 5 and County Executive in Highland. And that was such a great event, and I got, I learned so much. We talked about PS expansion of the plant service areas, we talked about industrial mulching. Mostly, these are issues pertaining to the western part of our county. Then, I sent emails to members of HCCA and I said, in the east we have a couple of interesting issues as well, and then it would be nice if we can host and organize an event and then for all of us to talk to people and talk to our residents and voters about the issues in the east. Now, to me, I hold the Route 1 revitalizations very seriously into my heart. The success of Route 1 revitalizations and how we do this thing correctly will affect the entire county. And this will affect our economy, this will affect our school district, quality of life, everything. So I'm glad to see, crowds from Elbridge, Savage, from District 4, District 5, all of Howard County, and maybe some even people from our adjacent counties all coming together, because we need to all talk together and then we need to have that shared vision to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do I get to go? So thank you to Stu, to Susan, to our pumpkin picker, to everyone who's here tonight, everyone who asked a question. It's really important that you're here, and it's also really important that you keep coming, which I know is tiring. But we have a lot of opportunity ahead of us. We have a new high school coming to Mission Road. We have additional investments coming along Route 1. We have the opportunity with our sustainable community money here in North Laurel and Savage, and we cannot sit by if the county executive takes millions of dollars away from Route 1 again. I think everyone in this room is tired of that happening. That's why you're here, because you want investment to happen here along Route 1. So I hope that you got emails so that way the next time we have Route 1 things, we will reach out. And I know it's tiring, but they need to see you. They need to keep seeing you. I know Becky knows that, so thank you.
Thank you all. On behalf of the Savage Community Association and the Howard County Citizens Association, we want to thank you very much for being here, and more importantly, for being extremely civil, which is magnificent and appreciated very much. And before you leave, maybe you'll consider becoming a Howard County Citizens Association paid member. Go on our website, howardcountyhcc.org, And while you're at it, you might as well join Savage Community Association if you haven't done it already. Between the two groups, we got a, as they say, young kids, awesome group. Now before you leave, hold it, time out. This isn't over yet. Hold it, time out. I want to seriously thank the candidates because there is no, in this group here, after what you've heard tonight, believe me, there is no losers. They're all winners. And if somebody does lose, which unfortunately is going to happen, except for one, there's always exceptions. If someone does lose, I would hope that the so-called losers become winners and maybe joining HCCA and Savage Community Association and testifying to your heart's content. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here. It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much. And Mackenzie, you're fantastic.